We did a pilot for almost 6 months where we collected plastic waste from homes, and we realized two problems had to come. One, we never got PET, right? Because people knew there is a value, तो पहले ही छट के अलग हो जाता था. What we got, the second problem was it also contained food waste, because when a half-eaten packet of chips or a half-drunk bottle, is being thrown, so it contains the wet waste and food waste also, which again creates a further problem. So you can't segregate that. Then it gets stinky. There is a bio angle. A lot of issues are there. So that's where we stopped, because that segregation at source, probably there are organizations in the country who are doing it, who have managed to convince the customers, who have managed to educate the citizens that you have to segregate. But हमसे नहीं हो पाया. So perhaps if we can work on that, we can resume plastic waste door-to-door collection.
Now we know that Hulladek recycling has also entered other waste streams. Apart from e-waste, we are also now collecting battery waste, tire, oil, cloth and plastic waste. But something that we are not doing currently is collecting plastic waste from individual households.
Yeah.
Because we have always said how difficult it is to segregate and process that waste. And in Kolkata, in the city that we are headquartered in, there is no real player of plastic waste here. So what do you think, as an industry expert, what do you feel is the solution that we are providing as an industry to the residents of Kolkata for their plastic waste, which is one of the most generated waste categories?
See, I tell you, plastic, again the concept, bring back to the concept of positive and negative items. So positive and negative items exist in plastic as well. Now in plastic, the parallel economy of so-called kabadiwalas is so strong that any plastic item which has a positive value, you will never find it reaching the landfill. Okay. Because the segregation at source is so good that they will ensure all the items of value are first picked up before the truck goes to the landfill. Let me give you an example of a PET bottle. You have soft drinks in, you have water in. That's a positive value. Today PET bottles trade anything between 25,000 to 35,000 rupees a ton. Now if that is the kind of value you can get for PET, then there's no challenge. The kabadiwala will ensure that he picks it up because usko to free mein mil raha, right? And he goes and deposits it to his local collection point, then that goes to the bigger collection point, and ultimately this goes to actual recycling units who are converting the PET bottles into yarn. Okay. And that's how the cloth industry works. Reliance is the biggest recycler of PET bottles in the country. In fact, Reliance Industries doubled their capacity of their plant in Gandhinagar for PET recycling last year. So they were doing about 250,000 metric tons, 250,000 metric tons a year. They doubled it to 550,000 metric tons a year. Now can you imagine 550,000 metric tons of PET? How many bottles is that? Yes. So yeah, I mean, it's a positive value. But at the same time, you have multi-layer packaging such as chips packets, biscuit packets, etc. that do not have a recycling value unless some technology comes and changes that, right? So that ends up in the landfill, and when that ends up in the landfill or that ends up unsegregated, then what happens with that is that the household also ends up giving at that only. The non-recyclables, because there is no value chain attached to it, it has to be funded by someone. So otherwise I am collecting that, but if it's not sellable or not recyclable, I don't get any money out of it.
Right.
So I don't get money, then what happens?
Correct.
Right? So ultimately then that has to be funded. That's why the concept of EPR is doing so well. The concept of deposit refund schemes in plastic is doing so well. Where money collected at the time of purchase of product is deposited and that money is used to recycle it or collect it back. These kind of schemes coming into the market will work very well. Another beautiful thing that is happening is to encourage recycling of non-recyclables is that brands like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, etc. are now mandating use of PCR, which is post-consumer recyclables, in manufacturing of new plastic packaging items that they are using. Let me give you an example. You must have noticed that aaj se 8-10 saal pehle, the Coke bottles or the water bottles used to come in crates. These crates made of LD, hard crates, they used to come in. Now if you buy a Coke bottle, 6-pack or 10-pack, you see it is shrink film wrapped. Right. It does not come in a crate. Right. Why they did this? Because the LD had a very high recycling rate और वापस ही नहीं आता था. Because वो चोरी हो जाता था दुकान से या दुकानदार खुद बेच देता था. It never came back. So So they realized that there is no value. So shrink film became easier, but shrink film is a non-recyclable. When shrink film is a non-recyclable, the value became very less. Also, it would get mixed in normal plastic waste, तो उसको segregate करके निकालना है. And shrink film का वजन क्या है? कुछ नहीं है. Coca-Cola has mandated from the year 27-28 that a minimum of 20% and then increasing 10% every year over the next 5 years, 27-28 to 32-33, up to 70% of total production of shrink films has to be done through post-consumer shrink films which are recycled. Which means that Coca-Cola is going to be incentivizing collection of shrink films back from the market, right? And that has to be collected back, put into a grinder, recycle it, उसका दाना बनेगा, दाना बन के उसी दाना से नया shrink film बनेगा, right? So that kind of an incentive will help companies like us as well.
Right.
So if they are doing it for shrink films, tomorrow we can start collecting shrink films because Coca-Cola is willing to pay for it, right? So unless such scheme comes, the non-recyclables unfortunately will also be non-monetary and therefore also non-recycled, non-collected, non-segregated. The day that starts happening, the money comes from, why not? It will happen.